Real people, real opinions.
Real Talk Radio. The multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.
Ireland's classic hits.
What we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking to Tom Kitterick. And Tom was on with us before, and he is a fireman. But you may remember, of course, the retained firefighters. He was on with us going back about 3 or 4 weeks ago about the horrendous conditions and the horrendous pay that they get. And many people reacted to when he was on. But there has been recommendations by the Labour Court to increase. And you remember he said they get $8,870 a year, which works out, for the amount of time you're actually on call, it works out about 99 cents a day or something ridiculously low. If you remember that conversation we had with him. And he talked about having to live, I think it was 3 kilometres from the fire station, and you're restricted in where you can go and all that kind of stuff. But now the Labour Court has proposed that they increase that 8,870 to 11,769, which is still not really an awful lot of money. And they've also recommended the retainer be increased by 24% to 32.7%. Now, members, of course, are disappointed, said to be very disappointed with the recommendation, claiming it does not address the low value of the retained firefighter and, I suppose, the precarious parts of their pay structure, such as the call-out payments. Now, the Labour Court is also recommending that the size of the retained service be increased by 400 additional firefighters in order to address the shortages, because, of course, Tom mentioned the last time that they're working too many hours or on call too many hours, certainly, because there just isn't enough of them. But see, here's the contradictory thing. The Labour Court is recommending, that you increase the staff by another 400 additional retained firefighters. But how can you increase the staff? I imagine this is why SIP2 are not happy, when you don't pay them enough money, because it's not very attractive for anybody to want to go into. Now, Tom joins me again, Tom Kitterick, who is a retained firefighter. Tom, good evening to you again. Nice to talk to you.
Good evening, Ireland. Thanks very much for having me on again.
Now, Tom, of course, I'm looking at the recommendations here from the Labour Court, and it's a bit contradictory. So they want an extra 4,000 additional staff, but they only want to increase the pay nominally from 8,870 to 11,769. Now, this is being rejected by SIP2, I assume.
Yes. This is very, very disappointing, to be honest. Mm-hmm. In our wildest dreams, we wouldn't have thought that we could ever have got recommendations so disappointing. But that's what has come out of it. You make a very good point there yourself about the 400 people. There's no ways you're going to get them. I think the last time I was talking to you, I was saying that the retainer for a new entrant was roughly 99 cents an hour. That's what it.
That's your on-call wage, essentially. Yes, yeah, for when you're on call.
Yes,
yeah.
And what this in effect means is that instead of having a new entrant now on 99 cents an hour, they want them to work for 136 an hour. Which is,
right.
which is on paper it's a 25% improvement. You see, but I mean it's 25% of very little is still very little.
Yeah, you have 6 hours work for a pint of beer. You know what I mean? I mean, for God's sake. So I mean, it is ridiculous. So was what have SIP2 said in relation? Well, they've rejected it, obviously. So does that mean you're going to continue? And we've seen a lot of the, people standing outside the fire stations, with the placards, etc., etc. Does that mean the strikes are going to continue? The work to rule is going to continue?
Well, what happens first is we put this to ballot, and we ballot all our.
We know what the answer is going to be, Tom, don't we?
I think we do. I'd be very surprised if this isn't overwhelmingly rejected, because judging even from my messages and phone calls I've got over the last day, the anger out there is, when I was talking to you last, the anger was fairly high following that day in the Dáil and outside the Dáil. But the anger is actually heightened beyond that now.
Now, because this is insulting almost, isn't it?
It is. It's actually bordering on offensive. What has come out here? It's kind of basically. It's basically the proposals that management put forward, really, except for the slight raise in the retainer. That's about the only thing I'd say that has come out of it from our point of view. And the whole purpose of this really was, of course, the firefighters could make a living from this, and that they could show a fixed income if they're getting a mortgage and doing all
Well,
sorts
yeah,
of
I mean,
things.
look, I mean, I had no understanding until you spoke to us the last time, and I'm sure you opened up a lot of listeners' eyes. It's the work that 2,000 retained firefighters do across the country in 200 stations. So, like, we didn't know that you're not allowed to live, any further than, I can't remember what it was now, away from
2.5 kilometres.
2.5 kilometres away from the fire station. We didn't know, how difficult it is because, of course, you have to buy a house in that area, and if it's an expensive area, well, it's going to cost you more money, so you can't live somewhere cheaper. We didn't know that, all this idea that you can't even go out for a night out on a wedding. You can't have a drink on a night out on a wedding because, of course, if you're on call 7 days a week, you're essentially, that's your job. And the idea that somebody would insult you and say, we'll give you 99 cents an hour to upset your life like that. I know you have a passion for it, and I know it's a vocation too. I get that. But in saying that, you need to be rewarded for that because you are saving lives.
Yeah, yes. And the other part of it is, apart from making, even a half a living of this, what firefighters were trying to do here was save the service from, it's in terminal collapse. It is going to collapse to nothing. Tonight we have fire stations that don't have enough crew to respond. The public don't know that, but that is the reality. And this will happen right across the country in different stations, and probably even in some of the bigger towns, not just smaller towns where the population might be small enough. It will happen in the medium-sized towns as well. And these towns that have a fire service for the last 50 or 60 years. Won't have one if we keep on going this way.
And to point out, by the way, the fire service also drive the ambulances as well, so that doesn't help.
Yeah. Those towns had fire stations and a fire service in probably some of the worst times in this country, some of the most challenging economic times, and now we're heading into, in these times in 2023, we're heading into a collapse of the retained fire service in those towns across the country. And apart from the making a living of the thing and it not being fair and being on call 24/7, this is about saving the service as well. Because we're all
it's an important service. It is an important service. Of course it is.
Yeah.
And everybody, there's no. Well, I don't disagree with that, and I don't think any sane person would disagree with that. Because although you may not get called out a huge amount of times, those times that you are called out, you can save lives. You do save lives if it's to an RTA, a road traffic accident, or to somebody's house on fire, which thankfully we don't see as much of nowadays because of fire retardant materials. Thankfully, we don't see that as much nowadays, but still it does happen. All of that saves lives.
Yeah, and just going back to the 400 extra firefighters. We welcome any move to bring extra firefighters. 400 probably wouldn't have been near enough, but just that we mentioned the figure 400. I think there's 400 vacancies in the retained fire service at the moment. So in order to bring in 400 extra, you would have to bring 800 to even.
Yeah, we put an ad out now. If anybody's interested in working as a retained firefighter for 136, is that what you said, an hour? Yeah. I don't think the people are going to be texting in like mad looking for that job because you have to. No, and you obviously have to subsidise your earnings by being in a full-time job as well, and then you have to have a very understanding employer who's going to let you go at a moment's notice if indeed you get a call to go because you're a retained firefighter. So there's very few jobs that would be that understanding.
No, and this is a thing that's really coming up now, very much in the last 10 years. That there's less and less people with another job now because they can't get an employer to be that flexible with them. Mm-hmm. In any kind of employment, no employer really wants you to leave your employment to go on a call out, literally in seconds' notice, and not knowing when you'll be back either,
I think we are going to have a problem going forward in the future, Tom, because as well as the retained firefighters, you mentioned there's a shortage of firefighters generally, and there's also a shortage of Garda Síochána. And it's just that young people now seem to want to go into technology and other types of jobs where they don't want to get their hands dirty, maybe. I don't know what it is. So we're not really seeing people going into the industry, which is going to be a big problem in the future, isn't it?
It is going to be a big problem in the future. And even if we fixed or we want fixed, it'll be still very challenging because We are in a situation now where we've full employment. I think it's something like 4% unemployment or something. It's full employment.
Bit
So
over that, yeah.
the reality is, just say a young lad looks at an ad looking for retained firefighters in this town, or she is looking at it, and they also have an industry down the road that probably would pay them maybe 44,000 in the first year in that industry for doing a straight weeks, knowing when they're on, knowing when they're off, and knowing when their weekends off, and having regular holidays and all that. So then they look at the fire service, and the really fixed income, which is 8,800, I think, now is going to be 11.
11,769. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're open to the, to chance how much more you make. You do get other bits of fixed income in it with courses and with drills and that, but it's not much above that. And this is the point that we kind of maybe we failed to get this point across. We've made it often enough that the retained fire service has to go out now and compete with what's out there rather than stuck in the mode that it's in. You see, traditionally it was a job that was, we'd say, a sideline to another job.
Yeah.
But in those days when that first started, the training was a lot less. There was literally no training. We'd say going back 40 or 50 years, there wouldn't have been breathing apparatus training or RT or radio traffic accident training or all those, confined.
And by the way, do you get sick pay? Do you get sick pay or maternity pay or parental leave, or do you get any of those benefits?
To be honest, we struggle with all those things.
Okay. Yeah.
They're all there on paper in theory, but
they were recommendations, I think, by the Labour Court as well, that be addressed, obviously,
Yeah, they touched on some of those things, but like in terms of really what we were trying to do here was kind of launching, we'll say, a new model, and launch a new model, and these recommendations has completely missed the runway in this. That they haven't even touched on what we're trying.
See, I don't think, and I think the public are genuinely behind you, and I think more of them would be behind you if they understood your job. And for people who don't understand, I mean, you're lying in bed at 3:00 in the morning. I suppose years ago it was a pager. Nowadays, just your mobile phone goes off with an alert, I imagine. Or how does that work? Is it just your mobile phone? They just ring your mobile phone?
No. You carry a pager.
Oh, pager. So they still use pagers. Okay.
Yeah, you carry a pager and you carry that with you everywhere. That's beside your bedside at night, and it's
okay.
It's on your belt all the rest of the day.
So your pager goes off at 3:00 in the morning, and you get, and you've got to be in the fire station. How quickly?
Yeah. You have to be. You have to be in the fire station, and you have to be rolling out of the fire station within 5 minutes after going off.
That's incredible.
So we say it goes off in your house and you're in bed at night. You have to get dressed quickly, shoot down the stairs into the car.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's no ice in the window or stuff like that. And you get to the station, you get on your gear, you get the doors opened, and you're rolling in 5 minutes after going off beside your bedside. So you're actually rolling. You're mobile to the instant.
That's incredible.
That is.
Yeah.
And I think the national average is something around 5.9 minutes or 6 minutes or something like that, and most counties are 5 or thereabouts.
And you don't, and well, to that point, you really don't know what you're going to until you get to the station, and then you're going to an RTA or a fire or whatever it happens to be.
No, you don't have a clue until you get to the station, and you read the printout. It prints out automatically for you there.
And you have to have a love for the job, because I'm sure you have arrived in a lot of situations, accidents, and particularally road traffic accidents. Where
you have to have you do have to have a love for the job.
Because you can't unsee what you see sometimes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's counsel available for you for those confidential counselling. But I suppose there is a good support group there when there's enough of you there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the numbers have been dwindling, and stations having full crews now. And what that's doing now is it's putting even more pressure in case there wasn't enough pressure on the few that's left. So now, whatever little bit of time they were able to snatch off here and there, they're not able to do that now when they go down to, we'll say they were a crew of 9 and they went down to 7 or 6. that's extreme pressure then, because they're all needed all the time then, and turning up within the.
And Tom, when is the vote, the members' vote? Now, when is it going to be?
It'll happen over the next few days. It should be done within a week. Anyway.
Okay, and what's well, there's no plan as yet, I imagine, but what do you predict? Well, of course, let's predict that it's not going to be voted for. I'm 100%. I'd be 100% sure of that. So if it's not voted for, what happens then? What's the next step? Have SIP2 given any idea what happens?
We go back to where we left off when we suspended our action just before the Labour Court intervened, and we were about to go on all-out strike on that Monday.
Okay, that's not something. That's not something we want to see. The general public don't want to see that, because I mean, and I'm not blaming you, but it does put lives at risk. Do you know what I mean?
That's the direction we were going in, and we kind of signalled what we were going to do, and we only suspended it while the Labour Court was intervening and while they attempted to do something. So, I suppose if this is unanimous to reject it, which I think it will be, we will go back to that position again. That's
okay. Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're probably going to have to go back to that position, and nobody wants to see you going back to that position. But there is a point you have to come to where you have to make a stand and say, well, you can't continue to do this. This is ridiculous. You know what I mean? And from your point of view, to get a bit of time off, so you're not on call all the time, there has to be more, and you're not going to get more unless you pay more money. That's just the bottom line.
This is the thing, and this is the point that we don't seem to have got across, or else people don't want to see it, or they feel maybe they cannot commit the resources.
Sounds very logical to me, by the way. Can I just point out?
Yeah, I mean, management proposed there that they would increase one pump stations to 12 people. They could have proposed that they would increase it to 20, because they know, I know that they won't get one.
No.
They will lose what they have. They will be down to 7, 6, 5. Rather than going up to 12. So you simply have to fix the fixed income part of it.
Yeah.
And we put all sorts of proposals forward for that. We're even setting up systems there that you could roll some of the money you get for calls into the fixed wage instead of getting it for calls. And we proposed all sorts of ways for doing that, improved holiday pay and improved other conditions to achieve some of that fixed income. But all that came back was what came back yesterday.
Yeah.
And
it's not enough.
Very, very disappointing.
It is. Well, look, Tom, I wish you well. As you rightly said, they're not going to support this. And unfortunately, we're probably going to see you back out on the picket lines again. That's not something anybody wants to see. But I
think
do
it's highly likely you will see us there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know.
But look, we have to keep going and
keep fighting the fight.
Achieve our aim here, because this just falls to pieces if we don't. So
yeah.
So we're damned both ways, I suppose.
Damned if you do and damned if you don't. Well, look, Tom, it's been lovely talking to you again. Keep fighting the fight, and hopefully at some point, you'll get us. By the way, there's a text in here. It says, "And Mayo will be back for 2024. Mayo for Sam."
Yeah, well, we live in hope here. We're hopeful people.
Well, I don't know. I have a funny feeling you have as much chance of Mayo winning the Sam as you have of getting 20 retained firefighters into a fire station. Go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
Not this year, but you see, we always pull a stroke when least expected. So we always come back, So we're resilient. We're very resilient in Mayo. So all the people in the fire service are very resilient as well. And I think they will continue to pursue what is right and just for them.
Okay, listen, Tom. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tom, and I appreciate you coming there. And I wish you well. All right.
Hello to all your listeners.
All right. Thank you, Tom Kitterick, who's a retained firefighter. Lovely guy. And the last time he was on too, he explains it so well, and he gives everybody a great understanding of what this particular strike and work to rule, etc., what it's all about. Unfortunately, looks like they will be back out protesting again, because they're not going to accept what the Labour Court recommended us. And why should they? It doesn't seem to be good enough. But that's entirely up to them and the vote.
Real people, real opinions.
Real Talk Radio, the multi-award winning Niall Boylan Show.